the whole idea of service living was actually, if I may use a concept of hotelizations of apartment renting, right? And it started, in 1990s. In our case, the late 1990s. That's when we, founded Frasers Hospitality, as part of the group. It's because we saw demand of, expatriates relocations into Singapore, right? And the 2 decades thereafter was really, influx of expatriates coming into the APAC region, emerging markets. So bring along families needing to have serviced for their rental, so-called lodging, right? Now, of course, fast forward after 20 years, the market has evolved. Right? I mean, in place of expatriates, now we are seeing localizations of talents. Yeah, in these markets, and with the localization talents, you see younger people, being hired, traveling on short-term assignments, short-term engagement, and we don't see the expatriates relocating into the region anymore. And so in place of that, the needs have evolved. Instead of large apartments, what we need to do is the hard specs has to be redesigned to cater to a different crowd, different segments.
And especially after COVID, right, we do see a structural change in what our customers is demanding for. I mean, we have launched the Capri, the first Capri in Singapore back in 2012. So it has been a long while. And we thought it's about time that we refresh the DNA of the Capri to make sure that we stay up to date to what our customer needs. And post-COVID, we do see several trends emerging. Say, for example, the need for a hybrid kind of living lifestyle. Of course, when we talk about Capri as a product, it was a hotel residence, and we do have the basic amenities, the facilities, offerings for longer stay. But in the new generation, we have built in even more programmings that are more suited to the digital nomads, to the Gen Z millennials who like to perhaps go for leisure trips. So a mix of business and pleasure, and they tend to stay a bit longer than previously, right? So we do see that there is a need to blend all these lifestyle experience, curating the program required for this particular group of emerging travelers. And also we do see that in terms of wellness, sustainability elements is becoming non-negotiable for the younger travelers.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, I think, the fact of the matter is that, real estate asset, we have to look at asset through life cycles of the assets. And that is in response to how the demand of use of space is changing, right? But post-COVID has been structural changes to how people work, right? This think about, part of the week you can choose to work from home, and, and with Zoom and virtual meetings, it has made, real estate use for office space, a lot less compared to pre-COVID, right? So whereas on the other hand, living requirements of, like renting continue to increase as people continue, to relocate into well-urbanized cities to look for job opportunities, to look for business opportunities, and so on and so forth, right? Therefore, assets has to be, redesigned, re-looked at, re-specs, repurposed, remodeled, right? So there are a lot of opportunities for us to do this, this shift, in use of real estate, at this present time.
I mean, similar to other projects, we usually have some fundamental assessment that we got to make before deciding whether a project is suitable for conversion. Of course, if you look at the bones of what you call the bones of the the original building. Not every single building is suited for conversion, because when it comes to offices in particular, in terms of the depth, the core of the building, I mean, it might result in difficult layout configurations. But then again, there are some buildings that are they are particular interesting for reconfiguration. Say, for example, old buildings with more regular layouts, and perhaps in more prime district whereby it's difficult to get green builds or greenfield developments. So that offers the kind of opportunities for operators to relook at how to creatively imagine how the space can be redefined to meet the customer's demand.
But ultimately, it's a matter of pricing. If an asset is really obsolete, the pricing will have to come down to a point when the remodeling makes sense, right? Obviously, asset enhancement initiatives, which you do lighter conversions, it is always cheaper. But sometimes, if it is not possible and if the location is very prime, what this means is you just have to gut out the interior and then re-specs.
From the operations perspective, it's really about how to perhaps integrate the initiatives, the various initiatives we have, translate them into values that benefits not just the operators, the ownership, but also the guests, right? And of course, guests are getting a lot more discerning these days. And as I mentioned earlier, some of the ESG requirements to them, they are non-negotiable. Like if you visit most of our hotels, service residences, you wouldn't find any trace of single-use plastics, because we have got that eliminated a long time ago, right? And there are things like MEP upgrade to make sure that the building is efficient, so that we save on utilities, and all these benefits ultimately get passed on to our guests. So I think this is something that is really important, not just to us, but for our guests as well.
ESG, sustainability to us is a very real value adding aspects of how we run business. So it is no longer just writings on the wall, and then you just claim certain things. Is no longer that, because we have journeyed for a few years, and we have been able to show owners how we can create real value, essentially focusing through launching what we call a Frasers Hospitality playbook for sustainability, rallying across levels and across functions within the group, to look at each property and how are we going to be able to, for example, focus on the cost items, MEP, looking at new equipments, more innovative solutioning, which has been very encouraging, because as things continue to develop, there are MEPs replacement that gives very good return on investments, right? So if you can invest in a new equipment, new chiller, but it gives you it's significant enough energy savings, right? And the payback could be as good as 3 years, 5 years. It makes a lot of sense, for us to propose the owner to change it. And in so doing, we actually will, create value, add value on even sometimes the P&L, the bottom line as well. And in so doing, we'll be able to create asset valuation upside. Not to mention that typically when an asset is looked at, in such a way where, it's very, very carbon efficient, there's always what we call a green premium. And conversely, if you don't have that, it's called a brown discount, right? And the green premium cap rate, is typically, that's going to be maybe a 10-20 basis point difference, and that would translate to valuation, upside for owners. So that is actually a very strong, value proposition here.